The day started like any other until the letter arrived. A simple envelope, sealed with the faintest hint of mystery, changed everything. Inside, a lawyer's letter announced an inheritance worth $6 million. At first, it seemed like the start of a fairy tale, an unexpected fortune, dreams of a new life, endless possibilities. But as soon as my husband read the letter, something shifted in the air. His face turned pale, his hands trembling slightly as he set the paper down. Without a hint of emotion, he looked at me and said, "Let's get a divorce." It was as if he wasn't the man I had married, the man who promised forever. The words hung in the air, thick with tension, leaving me in complete disbelief. How could this be happening? Was this some kind of cruel joke? The money, which should have been a blessing, felt like a curse. It was as if the inheritance had unearthed something buried deep inside him, something I never saw coming. My heart raced as I tried to process his words, each syllable cutting deeper than the last. What was behind this sudden shift? Was it the money, or was there something more? Little did I know, this would unravel a series of shocking truths that would leave me questioning everything I thought I knew about him and our marriage. My husband, Daniel, had always been a man of mystery, but I never imagined it would reach this point. On the surface, he seemed perfect, charming, successful, and loving in ways that made everyone around us believe we were the perfect couple. We met at a mutual friend's wedding years ago. He was confident but humble, and there was always a sense of adventure in his eyes. He wasn't the richest man I'd ever met, but he had ambition, and that was enough to make me fall in love. We built our life together from the ground up. I, on the other hand, was a more grounded person. I had a stable job as an interior designer and valued simplicity. I wasn't after grand gestures or extravagant wealth, but rather a peaceful life, one filled with love, family, and small moments of joy. Our relationship was built on compromise, me offering a grounded sense of stability, and him bringing a bit of wild ambition into our world. We complemented each other, or so I thought. The strange thing about Daniel was that he rarely spoke about his past. His family, his childhood, everything was always just vague. Whenever I'd ask, he'd dismiss it with a vague answer or change the subject, always with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. It never bothered me much. After all, we were building our future together, not dwelling on the past. But looking back, there were signs, small, but they were there. There was his obsession with money. Though never wealthy, he always had an air of someone who thought he deserved more. He worked long hours, often traveling for business, but I never questioned it. He was providing for us, after all. Still, there was a drive in him that seemed almost disconnected from reality. He would talk about the stock market like it was a game, his eyes lighting up as if money could buy more than just material things. It could buy freedom, he would say. And yet, that freedom always seemed just out of reach. Then there was the inheritance. It came from his estranged uncle, a man I had heard only whispers about. Daniel had always been tight-lipped about his uncle, and I never thought to pry. The man had been living in another state, far away, and had no real contact with the family for decades. When Daniel received the letter from the lawyer, he said very little about it at first. He didn't celebrate the news. He didn't even show much excitement. He simply looked unsettled. It was only when he sat me down, his eyes avoiding mine, that I began to understand there was more to this than just money. "I don't want this," he said, his voice thick with an emotion I couldn't place. "It's too much. And I think I've been holding on to the wrong things. I've been living for something that doesn't matter anymore." I tried to make sense of it. The money, the inheritance, it was a new chapter, a chance for us to live comfortably, maybe even make some of our dreams come true. But his face, clouded with confusion and guilt, told me this was no ordinary inheritance. There was something darker lurking beneath the surface. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about the money. It was about the weight of the past, and perhaps something that had always been between us unspoken. What was he running from? What had this inheritance stirred up in him? As the days went by, Daniel's behavior grew more erratic. He began distancing himself, locking himself in his study for hours on end, rifling through papers I wasn't allowed to see. I couldn't understand it. I was his wife, his partner. Shouldn't I be the one he confided in? Yet, with each passing day, he pulled further away. The cracks in our relationship that had been small, almost invisible at first, were starting to widen. And then, one night, when I returned home from a late meeting, I found a letter. Not from the lawyer, but from someone else, someone I had never heard of. It was a handwritten note, brief, cryptic, and chilling. You know what must be done. The inheritance is yours, but it will cost you everything. I stared at the words, a sinking feeling in my stomach. What had Daniel gotten himself into? And more importantly, what was he hiding from me? The man I thought I knew, my husband, my partner, was slipping away. What I didn't know was that the truth was far darker than I could have imagined, and the inheritance, far from being a blessing, was the key to a dangerous game that had been set in motion long before we ever met. The days after the letter arrived felt like living in a fog. Daniel was more distant than ever, consumed by something I couldn't touch, something that seemed to eat away at him from the inside out. He still wouldn't speak of the inheritance, and the more I tried to approach him, the more he recoiled. His usual charm and warmth were replaced with coldness and impatience. He barely acknowledged me anymore, retreating into his study, working late into the night, as if the answers he sought were buried in those papers. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. I decided to confront him. It had been long enough. I walked into his study one evening, finding him hunched over his desk, scribbling frantically on a notepad, his mind miles away. His eyes flickered briefly as I entered, but he didn't look up. "Daniel," I said softly, trying to steady my nerves. "We need to talk." He hesitated, then closed the notepad with a sharp snap. He stood up, his back to me, avoiding my gaze. "Not now, Claire. I'm not ready to explain." But I couldn't hold back anymore. I needed answers. "What's going on? You're not the same. You've changed, and this inheritance, this money, isn't just some gift. You're acting like it's a curse." He turned around, his face a mask of frustration and guilt. For the first time in days, his eyes met mine, but there was something cold behind them. "You don't understand. You wouldn't understand. This isn't about us anymore, Claire. It never was." The words hit me like a slap to the face. "What do you mean it's not about us?" I asked, voice shaking. "You're my husband. We're supposed to be in this together. What happened to us? What's changed?" He exhaled sharply, his voice barely above a whisper. "This money, it's tied to something I can't escape. I've been trying to protect you from it, but I can't anymore." His words sent a chill down my spine. I felt the world tilt beneath me, as though everything I knew was suddenly coming undone. "What do you mean you can't protect me? From what?" He ran a hand through his hair, his face contorted with anguish. Then, in a voice that was almost a whisper, he said something that completely shattered everything. "I didn't inherit just money, Claire. I inherited a debt. A debt that's been hunting me for years." I stood frozen, the weight of his words sinking in. "A debt?" I echoed, barely able to comprehend what he was saying. "What are you talking about?" That's when he dropped the bombshell. He looked at me, eyes dark and heavy with regret, and said the last thing I ever expected to hear. "I'm not the person you think I am. I'm not who I said I was when we met. I've been running from my past, Claire. From the people who want what I owe them. And now they've found me." The truth hung in the air like a thick fog. I stared at Daniel, my heart racing, the ground beneath me feeling unsteady as his words sank in. His past, the one he had carefully hidden from me for so long, was coming to light, and it wasn't just messy or complicated, it was dangerous. "I don't understand," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "What debt? Who are these people?" He shook his head, the weight of the confession visibly crushing him. "I wasn't always the man you think I am. Before we met, I was involved in things I shouldn't have been. I thought I could outrun them. But now, with the inheritance, I've become a target. I thought the money would be my escape, but it's only made things worse." I took a step forward, desperate for more answers. "What do you mean, Daniel? Why didn't you tell me? All this time, I've been here, believing we had a future, and now you're telling me you're not who I thought you were." His face twisted in anguish, as if he was in physical pain just speaking the words. "I was trying to protect you, Claire. I thought if I could just keep you away from it all, you wouldn't be in danger. I never wanted you to be caught in this mess." I stepped back, my mind reeling. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Was everything a lie? The man I married, the life we built together, the trust we'd shared, was it all built on a foundation of deception? The silence between us stretched out, suffocating. My heart ached, but the questions kept tumbling out. Who are these people, Daniel? What do they want from you? And why didn't you tell me sooner? We were supposed to be a team. He was silent for a long moment, his face etched with guilt. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and defeated. "They want the money, Claire. The inheritance. But it's more than just that. It's about power, control, and they know I can't escape them now. They've been watching me for years, and now, with the inheritance, they think I've got the means to pay off my past mistakes. But I don't. And they'll come for me, and for you, if they have to." The weight of his words crushed me. My mind reeled as I processed the implications. Not only had he kept a massive secret from me, but now, because of that secret, I was at risk too. I thought I was living a quiet, safe life, but now, everything had changed. "I don't know what to do," Daniel murmured, his voice breaking. "I never wanted any of this to happen, but now that it has, I don't know how to protect you. You deserve better than this. I think it's better if we end it now. You need to leave." The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. My chest tightened as the reality of his words sank in. He was telling me to leave, to walk away. He was pushing me away to protect me, but in doing so, he was also leaving me with nothing. I had always known that love meant sacrifice, but I never imagined it would mean this. Was his attempt to protect me worth the emotional toll he was putting me through? Did he even love me enough to trust me with the truth, to share his burden instead of pushing me away? And then, in the midst of my heartache and confusion, I saw it. A movement from the corner of my eye. A shadow in the hallway, a figure lurking just beyond the doorway. My blood ran cold. Who else was listening? "Daniel," I whispered, panic rising in my throat. "Who's here?" Before he could answer, a voice, low and threatening, echoed from the shadows. "Did you really think you could escape us, Daniel?" The voice sent a chill down my spine, its dark tone like a rope tightening around my neck. Daniel's face drained of color as the figure stepped into the doorway, and my heart skipped a beat. Standing in the shadows was a man I'd never seen before, but something about him felt all too familiar. He was tall, dressed in black, his presence overwhelming in the small room. His eyes locked onto Daniel, cold and merciless. I could feel the tension in the room thickening, suffocating me. This was the kind of person I had always feared, someone who had power, control, and no regard for human life. "Who is this?" I managed to ask, my voice shaky but determined. Daniel didn't answer right away. His eyes were on the stranger, his entire body tense, as if every instinct was screaming at him to run or to fight, though I knew neither was an option. He swallowed hard and turned to me, his lips trembling. "Claire, this is Jack. From my past." The man, Jack, stepped forward, his eyes never leaving Daniel. "I see you've finally decided to face the truth. But it's too late for that, Daniel. You can't run anymore. The money, the inheritance, it's already been claimed." I turned to Daniel, confusion and disbelief rushing in. What does he mean? What's going on? Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. "I thought I could protect you. I thought if I kept the money, it would be enough to settle my debt. But they've been watching me all along. Jack, he's one of them." I could feel the walls closing in, my breath catching in my throat. Everything was unraveling. The man I had loved, the man I thought I knew, he had been living a lie, running from a past that was now coming to collect its dues. And Jack, this stranger in our home, was the link to that past, a past that was darker than I could have ever imagined. Jack's cold smile made my skin crawl as he stepped closer to Daniel, almost as if savoring the moment. "You should have known better, Daniel. We don't just let people walk away from debts like yours. We take what's ours." "Please, Jack," Daniel pleaded, his voice cracking under the weight of his regret. I thought I could fix it. I thought if I got the money, I could make everything right. I could pay off what I owe and protect her. But I didn't know it would come to this. I didn't know they would. You didn't know? Jack's voice cut through the room like a knife. You didn't know the price of your betrayal? All these years, you thought you could escape, but now you've dragged her into it too. You made the deal, Daniel. You signed the papers, and now we're here to collect. My chest tightened as I struggled to process the weight of his words. What did you do, Daniel? I whispered, feeling a knot of betrayal tightening in my gut. What did you sign? Daniel looked down, unable to meet my eyes. The shame was too much to bear. I signed away more than just money. I signed away our lives. When I took that inheritance, I didn't know it came with strings attached, strings tied to people like Jack, people who will stop at nothing to get what they're owed. I felt the ground beneath me shift as the truth hit me like a wrecking ball. My husband, my partner, had made a deal with the devil. And now, because of that, our lives were in danger. I had been living in a lie, and everything I thought was real, the love, the trust, the future, was built on a foundation of betrayal. But the ultimate betrayal came next, a twist I never saw coming. As Jack stepped closer to Daniel, I thought he was going to take him away, drag him into the abyss where he belonged. But instead, Jack's gaze flicked to me, a twisted smirk curling on his lips. You should have known better than to marry a man like him, Claire, Jack said, his voice laced with venom. You think you're innocent in all this? You're just as much a part of this mess as he is. You'll see. Soon enough, you'll realize that you're nothing but a pawn in this game. The words hit me harder than anything else he'd said. A pawn. I was just a piece in their game, caught in the web of Daniel's past, and now there was no way out. Daniel's eyes met mine, desperate and pleading. I never wanted this, Claire. Please, I swear to you, I never meant for you to get hurt. But as Jack stepped forward, I saw the truth in his eyes, the truth that Daniel had always known but never shared with me. The truth that in the end, I was just as trapped as he was. The betrayal wasn't just in the past. It was happening right here, right now. And there was no escape. The air in the room felt suffocating, like I was drowning in the weight of everything that had unfolded in such a short span of time. Jack's cold words, the fear in Daniel's eyes, the overwhelming sense of betrayal, it was all too much. But in the midst of the chaos, something inside me shifted. I couldn't let this destroy me. I couldn't let this be the end. I turned to Daniel, my heart torn in two. You've made mistakes, Daniel. But that doesn't mean we're beyond saving. I can fix this. We can make it right. You don't have to face this alone. Daniel's eyes flickered with uncertainty. You don't understand, Claire. It's too late. They'll come for us. I can't protect you anymore. But I wasn't backing down. I couldn't. No, you don't get to push me away. You never gave me the chance to fight for us, for you, until now. I'm not leaving. Not now. We're in this together, whether you like it or not. There was a long, heavy silence as Daniel searched my face for any sign of doubt. But I meant it. My love for him wasn't some fragile thing that could be broken by a few truths. It was deep, rooted in the foundation of what we'd shared, everything that had made us who we were. I turned to Jack, standing at the edge of the room, watching the exchange like it was some kind of sick entertainment. You can take the money. You can take everything. But you will not take our future. We'll find a way out of this, even if it means fighting you every step of the way. Jack chuckled darkly, clearly not expecting this kind of resistance. You really think you can win against us? You're just a woman, Claire. You don't stand a chance. But there was something in the way I stood, in the fire in my voice, that made Jack hesitate. For the first time since he'd entered the room, doubt flickered in his eyes. He looked at Daniel, who still appeared broken, but a flicker of something else, resolve, was beginning to spark in him. Jack's smile faded as the tension in the room shifted. You're wasting your time. You think you can change your fate? This was never meant to be a fair game. I took a step forward, my voice steady and unyielding. It doesn't matter if it was never fair. I will fight for us, for our future. And you? You're just the consequence of a past that can't control the present anymore. The finality in my voice was like a slap in the face to Jack, and for a moment I saw him waver. It wasn't much, but it was enough to break the stranglehold he had on the room. Jack's eyes narrowed, and with one last scoff, he turned on his heel. "This isn't over, Claire. Mark my words." With that, he walked out, leaving us standing there, the tension finally lifting, but the weight of what had just transpired still heavy on our shoulders. I turned to Daniel, who was staring at me as if he couldn't quite believe what had just happened. He reached out, his hand trembling as it touched mine. "Claire, I didn't think you'd be able to do it. To stand up to him." I squeezed his hand, the emotional toll of everything still taking its toll, but I wasn't going to let him fall into despair. "We still have a long way to go, Daniel. But this is the first step. We can't change the past, but we can change what happens next. We'll face it together, no matter what comes." In that moment, something deep inside me shifted, something I hadn't realized I'd lost along the way. Hope. I wasn't just fighting for him anymore. I was fighting for us. For the life we could still build, despite everything that had happened. It wouldn't be easy, and the road ahead was uncertain. But as we stood there, our hands entwined, I realized that the most important thing wasn't the inheritance, or the money, or the mistakes. It was that we still had each other, and that was enough to rebuild everything we'd lost. We had faced the storm, and though we were battered, we weren't broken. And in the end, that was the victory that mattered the most. Sometimes, the greatest battles we face aren't against the world, but against the choices we've made and the people we trust. Daniel and Claire's story shows us that even in the darkest moments, when everything seems lost, it's never too late to fight for what truly matters. Betrayal can break us, but it can also push us to find strength we never knew we had. The question is, will you let it destroy you, or will you rise above? If you've ever been tested by betrayal, or faced a moment of uncertainty in your life, I want to hear from you. How did you overcome it? What did you learn? Drop a comment below and share your story. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that remind us that redemption is always possible, no matter the odds.